Greetings, growers from around the world. Jordan River here, back at you with more Growcast. I am the host that's an indica-leaning hybrid. Today we have Dr. Coco. This is a good one. We talk humic acids. We kind of go all over the place. I know you love Dr. Coco, and this episode is particularly strong, so I think you'll enjoy it. I know you'll enjoy it. Before we get into Dr. Cocos, Dr. Corncob, the FOOP, baby. Have you been entering our giveaway at growcastpodcast.com/FOOP? Every week it runs. Every week they're giving out FOOP to Growcast listeners. They've also got their mist now available at foopcanna.com. That mist is powerful shit. Pardon the pun. Use code GROWCAST420 to save on your nutrients and the brand new full spectrum mist, which you guys know I'm loving. It's one of only 2 foliar products I use. It's got a bunch of good stuff in there, from macro and micronutrients all the way to aloe and a little bit of bonus for IPM and some microbes. It's got what you need. Growcast420 is the code. Foopcanna.com is the website. And for the giveaway, growcastpodcast.com/FOOP. All right, everybody. I believe that's all for now. Oh, quick reminder, of course, the Blue Mat code, Growcast, at sustainablevillage.com will be running until the beginning of December. It runs all the way through November. I think it ends December 1st. Make sure you grab a Blue Mat while this limited code is active and use code GROWCAST. Wanted to drop that reminder here for all you high-frequency fertigators and automatic waterers. All right, let's get into it with Dr. Coco, everybody. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. Hello, podcast listeners who are now listening to Growcast. I'm your host, Jordan River, and I want to thank you for tuning in today. Before we get started, as always, I urge you to share the show. Spread Growcast, tell a grower, tell a friend. Get on the green list totally free for giveaways, tips, bonus content, and more. That's growcastpodcast.com/list. And of course, patreon.com/growcast for hundreds of hours of bonus content, Discord access, and more. Today we have show favorite, good friend of the show, recently settled into his new Casa de Coco. We have Dr. Coco on the line. What's up, my friend?
Hey, good to be back with you, Jordan. Yeah, it's been a second because I've been moving, like you mentioned, but I'm happy to be back on the show. I always love coming on Growcast.
Did you migrate the plants? I know you had a bunch of plants. What happened to them? I need to know about the plants.
Oh, my house plants?
Your plant children. Did they make the trip with you?
The plant children made the trip with me. Man, I had to trim back my philodendrons. And I always recommend philodendrons to growers, especially growers that fertigate, because they're wonderful plants to feed your runoff water to. And when you feed your runoff water to them, they grow crazy. So our whole living room was covered in philodendrons climbing around the walls and around the TV and around the windows and everything else. It's a very nice jungle sort of living room, decorating with plants, you know. And I really wanted to move the whole thing, but it was not tenable to move all, you know, philodendrons grow these like 100-foot long branches with leaves off of them. So we had to cut it back. We had to cut the 2 biggest ones back a lot. And they're coming back. They're doing well here. I think they like the new house. They're going to have more space.
Nice.
And probably better light. But yeah, it was sad. We lost like a tremendous amount of just biomass, just cutting that off. I mean, it was like a lot. And I'm thinking about how much sort of that plant is, you know, all of that carbon is carbon it's sucked out of the air in our living room, doing all these other sort of services for us. So if you don't have houseplants, get yourself some houseplants. If you're a grower, if you end up with runoff water and you don't have houseplants to feed it to, you got to sort of look at yourself in the mirror and be like, what's going on?
I love that, man. Yeah, people taking their extra nutrients so you don't have to just dump it, feeding it to their veggies, whatever it may be. When it comes to indoor houseplants, though, you said you like the philodendron. What else do you like for houseplants for cannabis growers?
You know, I always bring up we have, and I'd have to get my wife on the phone to go through all the species that she has. There's a bunch of, you know, orchids do all right with it if you give it to them in really small doses. Geraniums that we have do pretty well with runoff water. A lot of the other plants, my wife loves succulents. So we have tons of succulents that really do not like our runoff water in any kind of quantity. But yeah, you know, my wife does really well with our orchids, and they usually bloom every year. And she only fertilizes them with my runoff water.
That's killer. Yeah, I have the worst luck with orchids, and they are some of my favorites. Yeah, we could do veggie cast, we could do flower cast, but we have a whole nother podcast scheduled for today.
Well, I mean, I'll keep sort of pushing it into that because I finally have a place to do an outdoor garden. So I'm thinking about putting in a veggie garden. Probably not going to try to do a winter crop in the veggie garden, but come winter, towards the end of winter into spring, I'm definitely going to be excited about getting some other kinds of plants growing. For far too long, I've been limited to only growing cannabis in the tent, which is certainly plant horticulture. I mean, it's certainly gardening, and it certainly sort of satisfies that crave to nurture plants. But actually having plants outside growing in the ground is cool. I'm excited about it.
Oh, man, I could not agree more. I've been so jealous of these outdoor cannabis growers, listeners, of course, members who I see their grows all the time. And you're absolutely right. There's something so much more satisfying about having any plant outside in that full sun, especially that California sun. Oh, boy. So I'm definitely envious. What are you going to be growing? You're going to be growing some, hot peppers, some herbs, some vegetables, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't laid out my whole garden yet, but I love just having a salad garden, so we can go out there and pick salads like spinaches and other, leafy greens to sort of perpetually harvest throughout the spring and early summer. We'll probably grow some tomatoes. Tomatoes is actually a crop that's fairly similar to cannabis in a lot of ways.
Well, they say that. Do you stand by that? I mean, that was the big joke, right? Like the hydroponic store is all about growing tomatoes, and they say that they did that because they grew kind of similarly. Dr. Coco stands by that legacy myth, or I guess not a myth.
Well, yeah, they go through a similar sort of two-phase cycle to their growth.
Oh, sure.
And you sort of approach their growth stages and flowering similarly, especially if you're fertilizing them. Not that they use exactly the same nutrient element ratios, but just that they go through that same sort of shift from a vegetative state to a flower.
I see. See, that's what I thought. I thought that it was like they feed similarly, but I didn't think the growth stages are similar. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and tomatoes. If you're going to have a vegetable garden, tomatoes is pretty much the vegetable to grow. I don't even really like tomatoes, but if you grow your own tomatoes, they're just like it's a different fruit.
It's a different world. It's a different experience entirely.
Yeah, it's not the same thing that you buy in the store because most tomatoes are picked green, and then they're gassed with ethylene gas to make them ripen in a warehouse before they brought to the store. Ugh. And the vine ripened ones that everybody's sort of like deceived by, the only difference there is the whole vine is clipped when the tomatoes are still green, and then they're gassed with ethylene gas to make them ripen. But they're still like connected to a 3-inch piece of the vine. I guess that makes a difference.
Wow. Big Tomato is going to come after you.
Yeah. So, you could go to like your farmer's market maybe, and you'll be able to find a farmer that is picking ripe tomatoes. But yeah, it's just not the same thing. Picking a ripe tomato versus picking a green tomato and then ripening it up later is a different experience. And I think cannabis growers would probably relate to that, right? Like harvesting your crop early and then just trying to like gas it with something afterwards. That's not going to be the same stuff.
Holy shit, man. That's really funny. I didn't know. I mean, you just blew a hole wide open in Big Tomato. I don't know if they're going to appreciate that, but no, you
well, I'm not the first to blow that particular hole wide open, but yeah. I mean, in commercial tomato production, they don't harvest red tomatoes. They actually let other people come through usually to harvest the red tomatoes because they don't want them. The redder a tomato is or the riper a tomato is, it'll actually cause the other ones to start ripening too by the production and outgassing of ethylene. So they want to be able to transport tomatoes in sort of a rock hard green state almost to the final destination and then gas them. They're gas green tomatoes that become then red, but still kind of hard, and they don't have the same sort of sweetness. They haven't ripened properly.
Well, I mean, that points to an important thing because, a lot of people say like, and this argument has been covered in depth on this show and my other show, but they'll say like, oh, that's why organic tastes better. But I think it's just more about there's so much that goes into the process of homegrown, whether it's cannabis or whether it's a tomato. That tomato does not taste the same as a homegrown tomato. In cannabis, obviously my dispo weed doesn't taste as good as anything that you put out of your home garden again, but it's a number of different things, from all the different production practices, like you said, to the selection of genetics. You're never going to get anything outside of it. You're not going to get anything outside of an 8 or 9 week strain if it's mass produced. So you're deprived of a lot of different of a lot of gene pool variability and all this stuff. So I think it's more than just like, and like I said on the coffee show, we go so deep into things like organic certification, but it's more about homegrown, grown with love, grown with care. And not
absolutely,
and not fucking gassed with ethylene gas and clipped early because of production processes.
Exactly, and it really is a good analogy, right?
Yes,
yeah, it's the craft grown. I mean, and that's the thing. It's that we're putting a lot of care and attention to the individual plants. We're paying attention to a lot of these variables, and we're sort of craft harvesting them. I often liken that to like the small batch potato chips that they do, like the individual small batch kettle roasted potato chips.
So good.
Instead of like, your mass produced. It's just, it's a higher quality. It's a more sort of consistency. There's more attention given to each individual thing. So the way we trim, the way we sort of store buds in quart-sized jars and all of that, I think, contributes to, at least creates the potential for a much higher quality. Now, sort of your skill at doing all of these different things determine the actual quality you end up with.
Yeah, that's a good point, though. Craft grown is a very good way of putting it, because you even can do it on a larger scale. I don't know if you can do it on a massive scale. You certainly can do it on a larger scale if you take time and you take care, but it's harder. Craft is the perfect way to put it.
I think about that. I think about that with these like mass produced items that are able to maintain good quality. Because, man, as soon as I get like 1,000 of something in front of me, each individual one just doesn't matter as much. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's really hard to lay that same sort of individual attention once you get past a certain scale. So it's actually something I was just thinking about the other day as I was eating a mass-produced pie that was really good. And I was thinking about sort of the quality control on that. And there must be just thousands of pies rolling down this assembly line where they're making these pies. And how do they make sure that, it doesn't get a little bit messed up or off or something? How do they maintain that same sort of degree of quality? And it's a real, I think, concern. It's something that when you're able to achieve it at scale, people notice. It's a lot easier to sort of achieve that level of craft production, when it's a smaller quantity.
100%. I mean, with Purity Coffee, we find farmers that meet our standards that are growing a lot of coffee, but never to the massive production scale that you're used to. You just don't see it. There's a tipping point. There's a breaking point there. But that's exactly right. That's why so many people fucking love that coffee, is because we find these farmers who do rainforest friendly, bird friendly, every certification you could think of on a pretty damn large scale. It's really inspiring, to be honest, Coco.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, once it gets past one person, then you have to make sure every person in the operation has the sort of the same standards and the same degree of care and attention. And you can achieve it. You absolutely can achieve it. It's just one of these things that's much easier when it's like you in a 4x4 tent than when it's you managing 100 people over several hectares. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And we have stuff to get to, but I'm going to ask you this question, total left turn. Organic coffee certification is pretty fucking comprehensive. It's not just about what inputs you used and not using fertilizers. They talk about the transport, climate, you know what I mean? It can't be too humid. It can't be too hot. It can't be left here for too long or there for too long. It's pretty damn comprehensive. Yeah. Do you think that's coming for cannabis? And when that does come, I cynically worry about them using those safety guidelines and regulations to step on the neck of home grower rights. Yeah. What do you think about that?
I think both of those things are true.
Okay, great. Moving on. No, I'm just kidding. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, so the first thing I thought about when you were talking about how comprehensive, and also, the first thing you thought about when you said that was and expensive it is to get organic coffee certification. And that's a way, licensing and regulations like that is a way for larger businesses to have a competitive advantage in the marketplace. That's been true for a while about organic agriculture in the United States, that in order to be certified, you have to be at a certain level of scale. In order to sort of afford the cost of certification, you have to be at a certain level of scale.
100%. That's a big problem with a lot of these farmers down in Colombia who are farming coffee organically, can't afford the certification. But also that's like, and I'm sorry to keep crowing on about companies like Purity or the Coffee Institute down there. They help these. There are people helping, but you're absolutely right, man. It's hard to get certified.
Yeah. And so the companies that go through that process and become certified and then are able to charge a premium for their product because they're certified have it in their interest to continue to have the process be difficult or even sort of more difficult for people to continue to get certified. So there's some momentum sort of that captures it all behind scale, that the bigger businesses benefit from those things. And then that sort of squeezes people out and it leads to consolidation. And yeah, it's one more way to potentially regulate against sort of autonomy of being able to grow your own stuff or do your own thing. So, you know, all those regulations there too, double-edged sword. I mean, on the one hand, most of those regulations, not necessarily for organics, but for, you know, worker safety and other things like that are written in blood. I mean, they're regulations that were created because people died or to keep people safe or other things like that.
Someone got hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, but they often do create a regime that's unfriendly to smaller scale producers because, you know, there's sort of more red tape that you have to go through, more inspections, more equipment you have to buy, more, you know, rights you have to give your employees, stuff like that.
You know, we really need some sort of we need more cannabis groups. Coffee has become, and I know I keep bringing it back to it because it's the only big agriculture thing that I know what to relate to. But like I said, there are lots of organizations out there of farmers, of researchers who are working on this type of thing, grants for certifications, fighting for farmers' rights, making sure that certifications are fair.
Yeah.
There's none of that for cannabis, dude. There's no one standing up for Jesus Christ. Coco, you should see the corruption that's going down here in Illinois. We're going to do an episode about it coming up soon. But it's exactly what you're talking about.
Not in Illinois, Jordan.
I know, right? And we have such a rich history of cleanliness and integrity in the city of Chicago, all the way to back to the great Capone. He'd be rolling in his grave if he saw what was going on here. No, it's exactly what you're saying. The use of regulations, essentially for big cannabis to step on little cannabis, which is something that I wasn't really prepared to see.
Yeah. And there's not too many precedents for what's going on in cannabis right now because you have a sort of extraordinarily lucrative market that has been illegal, that's becoming legal. There just aren't a lot of precedents for that. There aren't a lot of products that were already popular, but that there weren't any businesses sort of servicing. And then suddenly it became sort of acceptable for businesses to service them. I mean, you can sort of look at the end of alcohol prohibition, but it's not a good example. I mean, it's not, the analogy's not very tight there.
It's not apples to apples.
So
you're right.
It's a weird one. And we're almost forced to like go back to the sort of basic economic theories instead of case precedent to understand sort of what's going on and how different actors are going to approach the situation and perform. But
wow.
You know, in sort of neoclassical economics, which is how most of these like sort of venture capital firms that are getting into the cannabis market act, they defend their own self-interest. They try to acquire positions and then defend their interests.
Right.
And we're seeing a lot of that in cannabis. And, you know, for a while, I've been sort of rallying about not supporting legalization laws unless they support home grow.
Hell yeah.
And that's not just because sort of, you know, it's in my interest, although that is true. I'm sort of definitely associated to home grow, but it's because it's in business interest not to allow home growers. And you're seeing laws like that in a lot of places that, you know, we're going to make it legal, but you can only get your cannabis through a dispensary that's taxed. That's in the business interest and it's in the state's interest. It's not really in anybody's interest other than ours to be able to grow our own cannabis.
Well,
so we need to be out there and advocating for that right and defending that right. And if other people are trying to make cannabis legal for their purposes without including ours, it's dangerous, because if you pass a law in a state that allows commercial cannabis and doesn't allow home grow, it's never going to get reversed. It's never going to then decide to allow home grow, because the legal cannabis industry in that state is going to become profitable. It's going to become powerful, and it's going to continue to advocate for its interests, which include outlawing home grow. So there's issues with different levels of scale. That certainly affects the way that states set up sort of regulations and licensing schemes and things like that. And, you can look at the difference between a state like Massachusetts or a state like Oklahoma in terms of how they've given out commercial licenses. And I don't think any of these states are really sort of getting it right. They're going to different extremes and sort of
definitely different extremes. I'll agree with that statement. Definitely different extremes. $2,500 for a license, or come up here to Illinois, $40,000 to apply, non-refundable.
Yeah, to Illinois, right?
Holy shit.
But Oklahoma's going to create a
problems.
Gold rush.
Yeah. $2,500 a pop, baby. Let's go. I mean, listen, I totally get it.
But you know what happens to the gold rush? I mean, it's that there's a supply opportunity. Everybody rushes to fill it. It creates a glut in the market, and most people go out of business.
Oh, I get it, man. I get it. It's going to create waves no matter what. We'll be right back with Dr. Coco, but before that, plant revolution, everybody. Revolutionize your garden, baby. Throw in those microbes. Are you using microbial boosters? If not, this is probably the single biggest game changer you could add to your garden. Adding microbiology into whatever medium that you are using will absolutely affect the expressions of your plants. You want to stimulate that plant's immune system with as much microbiology as you can to get the plant to express exactly what we want, those colors and those smells and all that good stuff. Well, Plant Success has a whole host of microbial products that are designed to do just that. I love their liquid orca, man. This is a mycorrhizal product, right? There's a lot of mycorrhizal on the market. What's different about this is it's liquid. You can add it into your grow after the fact. You don't need to be drilling little chopstick holes and dropping granules down. The liquid myco is truly, I can't describe it any other way. It's a game changer. Get mycorrhizal fungi back into your soil way after you've transplanted. Use it in a liquid setup. I've seen DWC gardeners utilizing the liquid orca in conjunction with the king crab beneficial bacteria. And it's absolutely beasting out their roots. It makes them get thick like tree roots. It's really wild. So check out Plant Success, aka Plant Revolution. You can find them in your local grow store. You got to try the king crab, and don't sleep on that liquid orca. Keep that mycorrhizal colony thriving. You may have hit it with some Zymes, or you hit it with a flush because you needed to kill some insects. Well, re-inoculate it. Get that fungal life back up bumping, and do it easily with a shot of Orca Liquid Mycorrhiza. You won't regret it. Plant Revolution, everybody. Proud partners of Growcast. All right, let's get back to it with Dr. Coco. I want to drill back to something you said, which is, and we talk about, this is in our interest to keep home grow legal as the host of Growcast, as the creator of Coco for Cannabis. But I really would argue, man, that just from an objectively moral perspective, and maybe this is kind of the libertarian in me or whatever, I think that we'd be on the right side of history. I think if you resurrected the mangled corpse of Socrates and Confucius and Cyrus the Great, and you asked these people what their thoughts were, I don't see how anyone who has a real deep character and a real deep understanding of philosophy and ethics and all of these things, they're all going to come down on our side, man, and the rights of the individual to grow a plant and their own patient. Yeah. You know what I mean? So absolutely. So I totally agree.
Right. We're on the side of human rights and justice. And
that's what I feel.
I completely agree with you.
I do feel that way. And again, we're never going to be able to do this, but if you resurrected the greatest thinkers of human history, I don't see many, if any of them, disagreeing with that stance. But that's just me. Maybe I am more biased than I realize.
I mean, absolutely not. Now, there's other things that could be dangerous potentially. I mean, I sort of do understand laws against, making your own meth, for example. Sure. Like, I get that. But we're talking about growing a plant here. 100%. And And when we're also talking about the other side of it, which is, okay, they're making the final product legal. So there's no longer an issue with that. It just becomes an issue of who wins, who gets to make money off of this
100%.
deal. Right. And people are looking at the legalization of cannabis as an opportunity to make money, as opposed to the sort of a celebration of human rights and sort of the victory of like freedom over tyranny or other things like that. They're looking at this as just dollars and cents. And are creating laws in that fashion. So if you're in one of these states that's considering a law that would allow a limited number of licensed producers and then state licensed dispensaries, but specifically prohibits growing your own plants, really think about why you would support a law like that. I mean,
I agree. I oftentimes find myself wondering, where is the line between good legislation and bad legislation? The classic two arguments, and old school Todd McCormick coming on the show and saying how he would argue with Rosenthal over the California bill back in '94 or whatever the fuck it was. And I wouldn't blame you if your line on those legislations was exactly what you just said, home grow. What's the home grow like? I think that's a pretty good line to judge by.
Yeah. That's the first thing I would consider about any cannabis law or any cannabis legalization.
And there's a lot to it.
It's like, okay, what are the rules about home grow? Are there rules about home grow? Are you allowed to home grow? Are there limits on it? Do you need license? Do you need to have a doctor's recommendation? All of these things. Like, how are they still regulating your rights to grow a plant, for crying out loud? Because, I think the growing of the plant part of it is as rewarding, as beneficial as any other part of being a home grower.
Absolutely, man. I think that we need to treat this. This is going to segue nicely into the second topic that I want to make sure we have time to cover here. They're going to treat this like other industries. Like you said, you kind of alluded to this. They kind of superimpose other models onto the cannabis industry, whether it's like, okay, we're going to treat it like alcohol, or okay, we're on the agriculture, the cultivation side, we're going to treat it like our agricultural department. A lot of people treat cannabis like it is any other crop, and in a lot of ways it is, but also it is very different from a cultural perspective, from a market perspective, and from a growing perspective. A recent guest was pointing out, us as home growers, we take a look at some of these studies conducted in the field and apply them to our sealed little grow spaces and our grow tents in our modified growing mediums, and it's kind of a different animal and it's kind of the same. You know what I mean? I know that's a broad starting point, but do you want to speak on that a little bit?
Well, no, some things are definitely different. Some things are still substantially the same, but yeah, I agree with all of that. I think that there's applicability of some of that stuff to an indoor setting. But for a lot of the specific questions that we have about growing plants indoors, we need to look at plants that have been grown indoors in the study themselves, right?
Oh, so talk to me about that. As someone who's looked at a lot of research studies, how many plant studies are there on an outdoor kind of in the field agricultural scale compared to indoor plant cultivation?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Finally got them after all these episodes.
I'm just thinking about, like, in terms of cannabis, like, of the academic literature that exists, like, what percentage is based on indoor versus outdoor?
I know that's a wildly
greenhouses,
wide question. Yeah, I would.
A different category.
I would love to make it more complicated for you. Yeah, when a study hits your inbox, what are the odds that when it hits your inbox? How do I think this works? You know what I'm saying? When you peruse over a study, what are the odds that thing is going to be an indoor greenhouse? Is it about an even split?
Well, how about this? There's definitely more indoor studies now than there used to be.
I bet.
And so in that regard, I would say of the more recent studies, I think there's more indoor studies coming out now. But that's also probably the less understood side of it. And the other problem I'm having, and just sort of like cursing my memory to come up with an answer to this, is I read a lot of studies on sort of like adjacent crops, or studies that deal with similar phenomena that aren't even about cannabis or about sort of cannabis related crops.
Like what?
Well, for example, like looking at soil moisture movement through the soil or through the growing media, or how moisture distributes. I got into that a few months ago, really thinking about container size and auto watering systems and surfactants and other things like that, in terms of Also watering frequency, looking at studies that affect things like some of the supplements and how well supplements affect other parts of sort of plant growth. So like a lot of the studies I use to think about things like humic acid and fulvic acids come from other crops and studies with crops like spinach, for example.
That's the other side of the coin. Those are applicable. Those are largely universal. You know what I mean? Right?
It depends on what you're using them for. I mean, you can't use a study on spinach to determine the best time to harvest your cannabis, but you can use a study on spinach to learn some things about how having fulvic acid in the nutrient solution will affect the uptake of nitrogen in the root zone.
Right. I guess that's what I'm referring to as things like the water study. Or like you said, humic's effect on the soil food web.
And there's some things that you just have to sort of infer. Like, okay, if this helped spinach or if this helped broccoli or something, we can infer that there's no reason why it wouldn't have a similar effect on a plant like cannabis. Well, a lot of those are for primary growing. So we're thinking more about sort of like vegetative growth, though. We're not talking about flora production.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, I guess it is pretty complex, but that is a good point. If you're talking about, something like water movement, that's going to be completely applicable across the board, you would think. Well, you mentioned humics and fulvics, though. Can we dive into there for just a second? That's all the regenerative guys on my show.
That is, yeah, there's an actual study. Hold on, I'll have to try to pull it up.
Yeah,
pull
it
talking,
up.
But there is an actual study about the humics and fulvics, and I want to pull that up that I cite in my supplements article on Coco for Cannabis.
Here, I'll cue this up while you find that, because it's funny. I hear the regenerative guys talk about humics a ton on my show, and then I see you recommending them as well. And I want to know if you're using liquids or powders. Talk to me about this study, all of you, and then the differences and similarities between humic and fulvic.
Well, fulvic acids are a subset of humic acids. So it was sort of like, Toyotas are a subset of cars.
Okay, different flavor. They're smaller, I think.
Yeah, smaller particle size. The specific ranges are escaping me right now. But fulvic acid is generally better, especially in... if you're doing the way I grow, which is with an automatic watering system, and I do use a liquid-based fulvic humic acid, you want a smaller particle size. You want to be aware of just everything that you're sort of auto-watering with, although humic acids really won't sort of clog up your system. They definitely have an impact on how the plant can absorb other things. So that's what I was looking at this study for. Here it is. How do I actually cite the study? I'm going to have to go through here.
My understanding is that it aids with nutrient uptake, a wide variety of nutrient uptake, right? And increasing those pH ranges, is it? You tell me. I don't want to speak out of line here.
Okay, so I'm just going to have to stick with the information. I put the study. Where is this? Oh, okay. There's the citation from. It says humic acid improved efficiency and of fertigation and productivity of tomato is actually and so there we go with the tomatoes.
Back to the tomato, the tomato connection.
This is from 2017, the Journal of Plant Nutrition. They did a large scale study. This was done in India, comparing tomato plants that were fertigated. So this is mixing everything in the water. Mixing all your nutrients in the water and the humic acids in the water. And the researchers measured that there's a higher available nitrogen, higher available potassium, that phosphorus had better translocation. One of the issues with phosphorus is it doesn't disperse well, and was available throughout the root zone instead of just being primarily at the surface. And so it basically aids in the nutrition and the ability of the plant to access and uptake other things. In the tomato study, the researchers noted that the plants grew taller by 5.7%. They had 7.7% larger volume.
Wow.
Greater or sort of more dry matter. They had a larger leaf area. They had increased chlorophyll content and almost 10% increased fruit.
Wow. Just from adding humic acids.
Yeah. And literally just from adding humic acids and changing nothing else. A large scale controlled study. with fertigation. And this is a study that I lean on because a lot of organic growers use various forms of humic acids, or will amend with it. And its role, I mean, basically it's just like organic matter.
Right.
It's just sort of decomposing organic matter that, helps the plant. But people have known that in soil-based systems, organic growers have known that. And I ran into sort of a lot of resistance with some hydroponic growers that just didn't think that it was going to do much in a hydroponic setting. So
people don't give you enough credit. They're always saying, "Oh, we've said this before. Like we got to get Coco to the regenerative." Like you're pretty balanced. You'll take the humic acids and show the hydro growers you're pro regenerative on large scale. We get you, Coco. The real listeners get you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you like the humics in a hydroponic setup?
I like the humics in any kind of setup. And actually, I'm reading this. What I say at the beginning of this thing is like, as farmers have known for centuries, like having organic matter in your grow media improves plant health. That relates back to sort of ancient farming practices of turning over the soil and letting the plant matter decompose back in the ground, creating that sort of topsoil effect that farmers have done.
I got a question though about the nutrients specifically. You said there was more available phosphorus, for instance. Is that because the humic acid is changing the form of phosphorus in the soil? Is that because you know what I mean? Like what's causing that availability to change, and why would that matter with something like a chelated synthetic nutrient?
Well, it's actually acting as a chelating agent, essentially. So chelating is making the nutrient into a form that the plant can uptake.
So why is it more? It's even more available when you're adding it to fucking your GH line or whatever? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to make a larger percentage of the nitrogen available to the plant.
Okay.
It essentially, it chelates it. So, if you're some portion of the nutrient salts is that these are, I'm not sure. I'd have to get into the actual study to find out how they were mixing their nutrients or what they were actually using for nutrients. But a fairly comfortable percentage of the nutrients that you're giving to the plant aren't immediately available, and humic acids will make them more available.
Okay. Well, there you go. Quickly, what brand of humic acid are you using? You use the liquid Nourish L or what?
I usually use the Diamond Nectar product from General Hydroponics, not necessarily endorsing it in particular. It is a good sort of liquid-based primarily fulvic acid product.
Oh, nice.
And you asked initially about using liquid-based products or powders or other things. You can use various forms. I think humic acid, fulvic acid is not something that you have to be brand specific with. You don't have to sort of match it up with the rest of the nutrients that you're using.
Couldn't agree more on that, man. Yeah, swap those out. I love the Kiss Organics powdered, water soluble.
Yep.
I have been told by the regenerative guys that you don't want the granular Leonardite or Leonardite or whatever. And that
you do not want. Okay, so that's an important point. You do not want the Leonardite based humic acids. This is basically made out of oil deposits, not out of sort of decomposing soil. So yes, I agree with that.
Can you? I hope you can answer this, man. I've been looking for someone to deep dive into this because I've been told that you don't want the Leonardite granular because it takes 6 months to even break down into your soil. Then I'm told that the products like the Kiss Organics water soluble Leonardite is instantly available. But are there other reasons you wouldn't want that? Like you said, is it because of the source? You don't want it anyways, even if it is available? Is it less nutritious or effective? What's the difference in the quality? Not the breakdown time, but the quality. Do you know?
I'd want to get a little bit, I want to look into this a little bit more, but my impression has always been that there's a greater chance of contamination with the Leonardite-based humic acids. And it's a quality issue that it's not as good for plants. When they discovered, this is like back in like the 50s or 60s, I think that they actually were first processing humic acid out of Leonardite. But I'm fuzzy on this history.
We're coming back to this. But no, tell me though.
Yeah, in my mind, it's a quality issue.
Okay, we're going to do some reading and get back to that.
No, there may be ways to filter, purify, sort of refine it as well, but it comes from an entirely different source. That's coming from more of a fossil fuel based source.
Okay, good to know. We'll put a pin in that one.
Yeah, I'm curious now. You piqued my
Yeah, buddy. I want to
curiosity.
know those sources. I want to know everything about them, not just the breakdown time. You mentioned, oh yeah, one more thing about the magic of humic acids that I'd like to get your take on. The incredible ability to bind harmful minerals,
Yeah.
bind harmful substances. Cannabis being a bioaccumulator, we don't want, especially organic growers. I've been told, that's where a lot of the tainted inputs come from, or organic inputs. And if you add humic acids, it'll tie up mercury and lead and cadmium. Is that effective?
Chloramines.
Chloramines too, yeah. Is that effective?
Well, people always ask me that about like off-gassing their chlorine from their water and other things. If you're using humic acid in your water, you
You're good.
shouldn't have to worry about any of
Sure.
that.
But okay, so do you know of any studies? I'm interested to know how effective, say, it is for binding mercury in the soil so it doesn't end up in your flower. And then my follow-up question is how much humic is necessary to bind X amount of mercury?
No, I don't know about those other heavy minerals. I do know that it does have a beneficial effect. I'm not sure about sort of dosing or will it actually prevent uptake if you're dealing with
That's
sort
what
of
I've been told.
a heavy metal laden soil.
I don't know. I've told it that I've been speculated to that it won't take much, just like the chlorine thing.
It does not
doesn't
take much to do
right.
the chloramine.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need like a quarter teaspoon or something per like 5 gallons to eliminate your chloramine. I'm not actually quoting that, but it's a very small amount to bind the chloramines in your water. So I would be surprised if it was a heavy dose. And it's absolutely for those reasons. It's one of the things that I always recommend to growers, especially if they're using tap water. But just period. Humic acid for all sorts of different reasons. It basically, like you're saying, filters the water. It purifies some of these things that you wouldn't want to end up in your plants. I'm looking to now both a leonardite and like heavy metal binding for humic acid.
Yeah, because I'm super interested in how much that would take. Again, people are probably wondering what humic acids do you use. I either use the liquid Nourish L, which is seabed derived, but I did just recently get a bag of the soluble Kiss Organics humic acid, and it seems to be working quite well as well. So those are the two ones I'm using. I really stand by Nourish L Microbe Life. Those guys know what they're doing. I'm excited to get Coco's take on that. And then, yeah, definitely check I don't say this enough, check your local website, your local water provider's website, and see if they use chlorines or chloramines. They usually list what they use, and the chloramines are much more stable. You can't just let your bucket sit for 24 hours. Chloramines are going to be in there for a while, but if you use humic acids, no problem either way.
They neutralize them. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Cool, man. Let's see. We got a couple minutes here. Let's plug all your plugs. We didn't get like a Coco for Cannabis update. So why don't you throw out all your where we can find you and
Coco for Cannabis updates. We're doing the Plant Train and Grow Challenge right now, Jordan. So the Plant Train and Grow Challenge is the one challenge we do every year where we don't coordinate the start. We just coordinate the flip day, which is coming up. It's October 1st, but it's not too late to get some plants growing and flip them on October 1st. We're actually going to do a cool Photon Tech giveaway on October 1st for that.
Nice.
They got the new SQs coming out, the square fixtures, and we're going to get one of those for a giveaway for the Plant Train and Grow Challenge. So you can still get involved in that. I'm about to start growing. The aforementioned move, right? And so now I'm in my new place, but I don't have all of my grow equipment yet. So it didn't all make it on the move. I'm waiting for seedling heat mat and my a new humidity dome so I can start my little seeds there. I want to do a germination video. I'm going to try to do more grow videos and post them on my YouTube channel. People have been asking for a lot of that.
Nice.
So I'm going to try to stay up with that. But so far, I'm still waiting for my heat mat. That's really the first thing I need to be able to proceed with my germination video. Although it's kind of risky to start when you don't have the thing I'll need for day 2 yet, but I'm actually thinking about getting those seeds dropped today and filming some scuffing action and some germination action over the next few days.
Nice. What are you popping real quick?
I'm going to grow at least 1 or 2, probably just 1. I was planning to do a 5x5 grow, but it's just going to be too much and I'm kind of running late. So I'm going to hold off on the 5x5 until the New Year's Grow Challenge. So I think I'm going to do one then with a bunch of plants. I'm probably just going to grow in a 4x2 right now. So I might even only just grow 2 plants. One of them is going to be blueberry. I don't know what the other one will be because I haven't gone through my seed stash yet to select them. But if I'm going to damn start, I better do that, huh?
So blueberry, and then everyone's favorite cross, Blue Dream, I'm sure. I had to, man.
We had the whole issue with me not liking Blue Dream and generating like hate mail, right? Yeah, I remember that.
I love it.
It wasn't really a hate mail.
No, it's great. It's exactly what we're after.
I've been told probably by 3 or 4 dozen people that I need to give Blue Dream another try. As we were talking about before coming on air, I lived up in Humboldt County for a while, a couple of decades ago, when Blue Dream was like almost all you could get sometimes. That's not really true. But
no, you haven't tried it though. You need to try it again, Coco. So
I need to try it again. Yeah, it's been a couple of decades. And plants change through time. I hear that a lot. This is an interesting little aside. Plants change through time. And there's really nothing you can do about that. So gene banks, where they store seeds and try to keep all varieties alive for all time, they have to grow those seeds out periodically. And when they do, they have to select new seeds to save for the next generation. That was actually an interesting thing I never knew about, the seed vaults. Every seed has a certain germination time, and they have to be grown out and new seeds harvested during that period. So every time they do that, the seeds change a little bit. You get a new selection, the genetics change. Every generation is going to be a little bit different than the one before. So
let's pick it up there. Next time we'll do humic acids. We'll do plants changing over time, maybe a little ag history. You never know what you're getting with Dr. Coco. Thank you for doing this episode, man. This was a killer one.
Excellent. I had a lot of fun, Jordan. As always, grow love to the whole GrowCast community out there. Come visit us. Come grow with us at cocoforcannabis.com. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, too, because I'm going to have that grow journal stuff going on. And I always do cool grow light test videos and all of that stuff. So
nice. cocoforcannabis.com, everybody. That's all for now. This is Dr. Coco and Jordan River signing off, saying be safe out there and grow smarter.
Grow love, everyone.
That's our show for today. Thank you so much to Dr. Coco, and thank you so much to you, listeners, for tuning in. Before we wrap it up, we're going to give some love to our choice sex testing partners. I just sent my tests off just yesterday to Rimrock Analytical, baby. Rimrockanalytical.com. Code GROWCAST for free shipping on your tests. They do soil tests, they do plant nutrition tests, and they do gender identification tests. Listen, get your tests before you pop your seeds. Make the order so that you have the centrifuge vials ready to go. Pop those seeds, and as soon as the first set of true leaves are full and they're moving on to that second set, snip a cotyledon right into a vial, mail it off with the prepaid shipping label, and you will have sex tests before you up-pot those things out of their propagation cones or whatever you popped them in, their party cups. You won't have to waste a single handful of soil, not a single square foot of wasted space. Sexing is a waste o' time. And feminization is nice, but, it's just a limited gene pool. So what do? You get some sex tests from rimrockanalytical.com. Use code GROWCAST, and you take care of those males when they're just a couple of days old, everybody. Stomp them out. Focus on the females. Stop wasting money on fertilizer and soil. rimrockanalytical.com, code GROWCAST. And shout out to Rimrock Analytical for giving 2 free tests to the people buying Seedco. That's fucking dope. No reason to do that other than he likes us. He likes the grow community. He wants to get people using this awesome system. He's giving out 2 free tests with Seedco purchases. That's dope. Thank you to Rimrock Analytical. And thank you, dear listener. Could not do it without you. I hope you are learning on GrowCast. I'm sure you are. It's my pleasure to continue to bring you grow education from a variety of guests that are far smarter than myself. I hope you're doing incredible things in your garden. I'll continue to be by your side to help you along. We'll see you next time on GrowCast, everybody. Bye-bye.